capacity of the upper reservoir and the lower reservoir obviously need to be balanced. The upper reservoir is about a 65-acre footprint, and it's a natural basin. It's a lined basin, just so you know. So it's a polyethylene lined basin. The lower reservoir is a 90-acre footprint, and it has a rock-filled dam also. Now, one of the things that Ms. Bath had mentioned was fencing, and in fact, there is planned fencing that will be around both those. There's security requirements for all of this. This is considered what's called critical energy electrical infrastructure, and as a result of that, it has to have security systems. Conduit and tunnels are 20 feet in diameter. The vertical tunnel is 2,270 feet down, and the tail race, which is coming from the pump house out to the lower reservoir, is 7,380 feet. The transmission line is 28.8 miles long. About 23 miles of that is BLM land, and the powerhouse and the substation and equipment are all underground. So that's it. Okay, so one of the things that's been talked about is the assessment studies that have been done that have been included. They're actually, if you go to the website, our website, you can actually pull up the draft license application and review that at your leisure. You can even download that draft license application if you'd like to. There is in there a recreational study and a visual impact study. As Mr. Bassett alluded to, there is information in there. We'd like to have more information and more possibility there. There's an opportunity there for additional study work to be done, and in fact, we want to work with the railway to obtain the information necessary in order to be able to do that. The visual impact study that was included in the DLA actually has pictures and what's called photo sims from a variety of different locations. The ones that I have put up here on this particular slide are from the night view spot that was developed by the railroad, both during a daylight view and a nighttime view. The arrow that's on there is actually the Gonder substation, which is lit up pretty heavily, and actually creates, there's not enough resolution here, but it does create quite a bit of disturbance on the night sky from this position. At any rate, what I want to emphasize here is that the intent and the plan is to use what's called dark sky compliant lighting fixtures. There is dark sky recommendations that we reviewed, and we intend to use dark sky compliant lighting fixtures. And the other thing that's important is to understand that we also want to be a part of enhancing and helping to enhance the railroad experience that the visitors have. And we can do that by a variety of ways, in cooperating and working with the railroad, including up to and during specific times, for instance, turning off lights or being available to answer questions, or even providing additional information that could become a part of the narrative that's experienced on the rail. We would really, at the end of the day, want to have renewable energy in this project be a part of the history and story of both Ely and White Pine County. And as a part of that story, it includes the industrial development, the mine, and all of the industrial work that's gone on in the past. And this particular project can actually help to enhance that and show the connection between what the mine developed as a part of its industrial life, and now what we see as a part of renewable energy implementation, and this being a critical element of being able to implement that on a broader scale. Next slide. There's been questions that's been raised about water sourcing and how much water is actually required. The Steptoe Valley water allotment to White Pine County, we are under contract with White Pine County. It's about 24,000 acre-feet per year. We have been informed, and the county has been informed, that if that water right is not utilized, and it was basically moved over from the White Pine Power Project, that if that water is not used, it is at risk of being lost. And everybody in this room knows what that means in terms of having allotments that are not being used and how that can actually become subject to being reallocated other places. And that is a clear risk. In fact, we've been informed that if in fact it wasn't White Pine County in this particular community, that would have already gone away. So this actually helps to show that the water, the groundwater, is being utilized in positive ways. The water agreement that was signed with White Pine County, it was in March of 2021. During the construction phase, it was also mentioned about how much water is being used. There'll be about 900 acre-feet of use per year during construction. The initial fill that's required is between 4,500 and 5,000 acre-feet. Now let's put that in perspective. That's the equivalent of about 10 pivots water use per year. And that's a one-time fill, and it will only be filled that water will only be drawn that one time. It will take about 12 to 18 months to actually fill that reservoir and complete that. Annually, because of evaporation rates, it's expected to be between 500 and 700 acre-feet. That's the equivalent of one pivot. One pivot per year of water that would be required in order to continue to supplement the water necessary because of evaporation. And we are also in the process of evaluating whether or not there are new technologies available that could limit the amount of evaporation by putting in flexible coverings and those kinds of things that are now coming alive in a lot of places and a lot of reservoirs all over the country. We're currently evaluating that. There's a cost factor associated with it, but we're willing to do that because it'll actually reduce the amount of water that's used on an annual basis. Working with Nevada on the production well site and relocation of the project site, we have a permit that's actually in application that's in with the Nevada engineer that is for the ability to move that drawing, that extraction point with. The FERC license jurisdiction. Kevin, are you up for this? So Kevin is much more versed on this than I am, and I defer to his superior knowledge and experience.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I am the Deputy General Counsel for R+ Hydro. I previously worked in the natural resource industry. I was the General Counsel for Rio Tinto. I've been in the industry for many years. My experience is in dealing with large-scale infrastructure projects and dealing with legal and regulatory hurdles and issues and licensing processes that go along with that. I really have only two goals today to tell you is that there is a process that's involved for this project. It is a large infrastructure project, a large capital-based project, and that I want everybody to understand and to know that there is a public process where the public will be involved, where the council, where the city will be involved, the citizens will be involved, and regulatory agencies will be involved. Will be able to voice concerns, issues, or to raise whatever comments that they have that the agencies can consider. These draft license applications and licensing application processes are long, they're complicated, complex, and my goal is to make sure that we are engaged in a meaningful way so that good decisions can be made that benefit the community and any mitigation measures that are needed for the project can be implemented. I put this slide up here so that you know and understand that why this is being regulated by the federal government. Congress dictated back in 1935 to the Federal Power Act that hydroelectric dams, and this is a hydroelectric dam, are subject to the FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, if it is located on navigable waters, occupies federal lands, or uses water from a federal dam. In this particular case, it's located on public property on BLM land, and as a result, FERC has jurisdiction over the licensing process. I put the statutes up there for you to see if you need to look that up. You hit the next slide, Greg, I appreciate it. There are 3 steps in the licensing process for FERC. Stage 1 is really the preliminary sort of administrative process, which has already been completed. That's where you file a preliminary notice to FERC. You work with the agencies to define and to develop what type of studies need to be implemented. Stage 2 is what we are just about ready to complete. That is where you do your studies. That's where you gather the information, the data. That's where you draft and write your draft license application, which is 2,000 pages of material and information which has been put out into the public domain. After the draft license application is complete and put to FERC, the agencies have 90 days to make comments on it. And I want to reiterate to you that it's a draft license application. It's intentional and it's part of the legal process that it goes through. These are iterative And the purpose of that is to get comments back from the agencies to help with the NEPA process or the environmental review that must be undertaken later on in the process. So if there are deficiencies in the draft license application, whether it's where one road is located or where other things are located, that is corrected and done in this particular process. That is ongoing right now. So we've gone through the 90-day process. We've received comments back from the city. We've received comments back from the county, from the agencies, from Bureau of Land Management, from the state of Nevada, as well as from FERC itself. And we're in the process of incorporating those comments, and we'll release and issue a final license application within the next few months. Once that occurs, stage 3 will occur, and that's where FERC takes priority, so they have control over this process. At that time, they will do their environmental review. That's a NEPA process. There will be public notification. There will be opportunity for all citizens and the public to participate in that, both in multiple stages at multiple times. And that's something that I encourage as a lawyer, as someone who wants to have that type of engagement, so that we can make sure that the decisions that are made are defensible and that they're robust in their nature. Get the next slide, please. So this is the last slide that I have for you, and this is really just the previous slide put on a Gantt chart over a long period of time. It's pretty hard to see up here. We are in stage 2. We are working on and preparing to file the final license application. The yellow areas, the circles that you see after the final license application, are where the public will have plenary opportunity to make comment, both publicly, orally, and in written. The agencies will take that back and consider that in their process. They will make revisions to their environmental analysis and to the environmental document that they will do. They will put that out for public comment on a federal level, on a national level, on a local level, and then they'll go out for the environmental review and ask for their additional comments before they make any kind of licensing or mitigation or licensing conditions or mitigation determinations that they have in the process. I expect that to last between 2 to 5 years once that stage 3 starts. So we expect that to begin within the next 6 to 7 months. So we're looking at a process that will last anywhere between, I'd say, the next 3 to 5 years. That's all I have in terms of the regulatory process.
Thanks, Kevin. One of the things that I wanted to add to that, what Kevin mentioned, was a cooperating agency status. And that is not something that our plus decides. And in fact, it's not something that anybody decides other than the FERC, as a part of their notification requirements, as a part of the NEPA process, will request certain agencies and certain entities as to whether or not they have a desire to be a cooperating agency as a part of that. Am I correct, Kevin?
Yes, it's a little more complicated than that, but FERC controls that, and it's a process that they control and we work with the agencies on.
Okay. So I just want to be clear about that. That's not something that we have the ability to influence or control. Cooperating agency status is something that will be done by the government agencies. Okay. All right. What is next? Kevin mentioned that we're in the middle of this draft license application process. We received comments back on or about May 18th. It was about a 90-day comment period that we received a variety of different comments back. We're in the process of digesting that and making sure that we appropriately address those comments. And we do that in a substantive way. This is not something we ignore. We have to actually either incorporate those comments into our actual application, or we have to address them in some way. Then, as Kevin mentioned, we'll be filing that final license application, we'll call it the FLA, by the end of the year. And then the NEPA process will kick off. Interagency coordination and interaction, as mentioned here, shown here, is the BLM has already signaled that they would be a cooperating agency, and there likely will be, NDOW will also be part of that. But that's for them to decide, and they will signal that back to the FERC. Our goal is an efficient and robust NEPA process, and it meets the needs of state and federal agencies, and is legally defensible, as Kevin mentioned today. Okay. To kind of wrap up, and before I open up again for questions, what to expect and what is coming up in the next few weeks and months that will be taking place aside from the regulatory process. I mentioned that we have a crew that's coming out next week, and we're going to do field checks on the site access and the route that we talked about. Obviously, being able to get equipment into there is going to be a critical element. It's a fairly complicated process that we'll go through. There is a window of opportunity that exists for us to be able to do that, aside from any sage grouse habitat issues that we eventually have to address. But one of the things that has been mentioned in different meetings and some other places that I've heard has to do with the size of the borehole drilling that we'll be doing this fall. That geotechnical borehole drilling will be done to qualify the information, to actually determine the information necessary for subsurface and the works that will be required. That informs the design. That design then will be subject to an economic analysis, a feasibility review to determine whether or not it's even possible to do that, okay? So we have a long road ahead of us. We have a lot of work still yet to do. The geotechnical analysis is an important step in that process. But one of the questions that's come up is the size of the borings is a part of what we do. Last year we did borehole drilling at borehole 2, and in fact I have one of the bits that was used during that borehole drilling, just to give you an idea of the size. And then I also brought a sample of borehole 2 drilling that I think is actually kind of cool. So if you'll give me a moment here. So this is the borings that will be coming out of the hole. That we actually put those into crates and sample boxes, and we save that. It goes through chemical analysis and a whole bunch of additional geophysical analysis. We save that in case there's a need to reproduce the sample and to reproduce the actual results of the testing that's performed. We're going to be drilling from borehole 3 down about 2,200 feet. So as you can imagine, this is a lot. That'll be a lot of these kinds of boring samples that we'll have. We'll store those local. They'll be in climate-controlled containers, crates, so that we can go back and retrieve that when necessary. That's important because that information is a critical part of the overall determination of the design. And I think I want to be clear about that. We have geotechnical work that will be required. We have hydrologic work that will be required. We'll be doing what's called HE, hydrologic evaluation drilling that will be required. There's a permitting process that we have to go through in order to be able to do that with the BLM. That will determine the recharge rate for the aquifer. That will determine whether or not there's water available or not. That drilling has not been done yet, and any speculation on our part or others is purely based upon whatever information is available in the public domain. When we drill that, then we'll know. And then we can put that out there for everyone to take a look at, and that's our intent. So that everybody will have a chance to look over our shoulders and tell us whether or not that information is valid or not. So, with that said, I'll open up for questions.
I got a couple of quick questions. Could we get the locations of the other projects you spoke of?
Our projects,
Yes.
they're actually on our website.
Fantastic. Winter operation, is there any scenario where it would be so cold this facility couldn't function?
I don't know if I can say ever.
Typically, that's not the case.
That's not the case.
Okay.
There's enough energy imparted in the reservoirs going up and down to where even if you have freezing that occurs in the reservoir, it would be at a very minimal level, and there is no expectation that it would freeze over.
Okay. How does the water usage intersect with the water rights? Because initially, you're going to be needing this much water to fill up, and then your statement, you're going to be needing this much water to continue usage.
That's actually in the agreement with the county. We have in the agreement with the county the right to draw that much water initially, and then it's reverted for the remaining portions of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Grady. I'm looking off your notes. I've been to many of these meetings, okay, so I'm not just shooting off these papers. You know, you say there's 43 plants doing this pump power. How many are using groundwater? The ones I've seen come from a lake or a river going down. How many are pumping groundwater out of the 43 plants in the country?
I currently operating is what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
assume, yeah. I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
There are none.
But
Okay. Okay, so this is the first one. That's the deal. And right now, you know, everybody said we're in a drought. The mine, thankfully is throwing 3,000 gallons a minute down, and the only water we're getting is Steptoe Valley or even pull. Okay, so then, going on, you know, where the water's gonna come from, I'm pretty upset at the county, and this is the second time I heard this big smoke screen about the 25,000 acre feet the county has for when they're gonna build a coal-fired power plant north of town. And the second time, you just said it, thank goodness we're gonna use this water, folks, or Vegas or whoever's gonna take it all. You're only gonna use 3% of that. So 25, it's 4,700 and some acre feet. So the statement of saying 25,000 acre feet, if you don't use it, you're gonna lose it, we're gonna save your bacon on that, that's a dishonest statement. I find that highly not good. And the other thing, going back to the water before I move to the next one, the point of diversion, they would first of all pull the water 12 miles north of McGill to save costs of building a pipeline north of McGill, bringing it down to the lower reservoir. So the point of diversion has not been achieved yet, correct? Probably not, probably part of the permitting, because
The permitting that I mentioned during the presentation, that's before the Nevada engineer, is for exactly that diversion.
okay.
And we have received indication that everything that we have provided is adequate for their purposes.
Okay, so back when the coal-fired power plant was put in, was gonna be a dream, thank you, Harry Reid, for shutting that down. That was 25,000 acre feet, almost 50 miles north of here. So the point of diversion now is in Steptoe Valley. Again, the state water engineer will be the one to determine if there's that much water in there. You know, so that's a big concern of mine. The point of diversion, the misstatement, you're saving our bacon by doing 25,000 acre feet. I'd like to thank Mr. Charchalis for this gallons, that's interesting, but let me give you a little more perspective. The upper storage, that 65 acres surface, that's 2.5, you don't know where Cave Lake is, it's drained right now. It's 2.5 times the size of Cave Lake. That's what that upper pond's gonna be. The lower one's 90 acres, it's 3 times larger than Cave Lake. So keep that in mind, you know, the gallons are just unbelievable, billions of gallons, but you go to Cave Lake, what if it's up there? 2.5 times bigger, folks. And again, like Donna mentioned, the first time we seen it was back over the hill a little bit, now it's right up on top. And I should state this first, that I'm talking as a city council member. It's not within our city limits, this project, but it's gonna affect our railroad, which we're part of. But the citizenry, the reason we live here is the mountains and the valleys and so forth. And reading, you know, the existing road on the upper side, access by the Duck Creek Highway will need to be improved for construction access. I've hunted up there, I've camped up there. It's 4-wheel drive, side by side. Take graders up there, that 2-track road is gonna be gone, ladies and gentlemen. Sportsmen, you better be listening to what's going on here. Any other road improvements? To avoid creating water truck traffic on Duck Creek Highway, our current plan is to pump water from the Steptoe side up Peacock. And I don't know how you went up Peacock. I've been up there numerous times. I lived here for 50 years. I've been on motorcycles, it tore up pretty bad, side by side, 4-wheel drives. That is a steep son of a gun. So you're gonna put a pipeline up that hillside. I don't know how the DLM or anybody can accept that. We go out here, it was bad enough we had a fire raise that mountain, you know. Everybody's upset about it, about the runoff. Now you're gonna run a pipeline right up Peacock. And I'll tell you one thing, if you guys are gonna zigzag up this road, this is gonna be a total disaster of this. There's now, you know, it's really interesting, you did mention, you're the first one to mention in the meetings I've gone, that this cavern, the borehole, is 20 feet, folks. The Yucca Mountains borehole is 27 feet. And there's a picture right here of what that looks like. That's, pass that around, 27 feet. So that can, the little core sample, that's what they drilled into the mountain, which they weren't able to make it all the way through there, over there. But coming down, so that borehole, 27 feet, or 20 feet in diameter, folks, that is huge. There's going to be some disturbance, and I agree with what our geologist said. That's going to shake things up, but it's just mind-boggling. So when you get down to the turbines, or how far under the surface is that? 900 feet is one time I was told. So they're gonna have to excavate that hole for the size of the powerhouse cavern, 362 feet by 78 foot. That's the cavern. How far below the surface, looking at your, it doesn't say how far. At one time I heard it was 900 feet. So you gotta dig a hole where these 20-foot tubes or pipes are gonna come into, to spin the 3 turbines, shoot it down to the bottom and get it pumped back up. So I don't see it, and it's, again, they've done wonders in Yucca Mountain, you know, go in there and excavate this. And so all this cavern you're gonna build down there will be all, nobody's gonna go on side the mountain and dig a hole in it, is that correct? There can be more than a borehole there.
Well,
Underground mining.
there's actually more than one tunnel that'll go in from the Steptoe Valley side. There's only one that goes in from the top,
Correct.
straight down.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I really do appreciate your comments, and if I was misleading about the water rights, then please forgive me, that's information that's come to us third hand. The reality is that I can't predict what the future is going to look like for either county's water rights or otherwise. And an implication about whether or not that water can be subject to something else is not inappropriate for me to say that, and I apologize.
Yeah, well, you know, again, when they had the meeting in the convention center, Sergio or Luigi, whatever his name was, he had the deer in the headlight look also. So, you know, I planned that one, I have to say. I knew it was going to come up as a misstatement back then, as a misstatement tonight. But another thing on that video,
So just to clarify something, part of the reason why the size of those tunnels is the size that they are is so that the equipment can actually be moved into the mountain. The equipment is large enough where it needs to have that size of a tunnel system, both the transformers for the substation and the pump turbines themselves. But you also need to have the ability to drive back and forth, so it's practically a double.
The nature of the question though, Greg, is where does all that material go once it's taken out?
That material actually becomes a part of the embankment system, and that's where it's largely self-sustaining. And in large part, the equipment material that comes out will become a part of the embankment structure. As I mentioned, it's a rock-fill lined embankment. That's where a lot of that is used.
yeah, and I heard that in the convention center thing. But one thing on the video, it failed to mention, it shows on the, but this is the first time, is the access road for your mechanics, the guys that drive in, that's underground too, correct?
That's correct, yeah. So that's why I was saying there's actually 3 different tunnels that access. One, the tunnel that goes with the water flow is a conduit tunnel, and that's lined. There are tunnels for personnel access, and then there's tunnels for the electrical wireways to be in there also. So I hope that clarifies what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I understand, but the video never showed the access tunnel for the equipment, the forklifts, the crane trucks, everything to go in and work on those huge turbines.
Yeah.
You know, they got to get them in there somehow.
Yeah, it's a
You know.
simplistic video, and
Yeah, it
obviously,
really is, but, you know, and they're coming off 93, and the dam is gonna be the picturesque lake for the train people. It's gonna be 134 feet, which I understand, some of the drilling's gonna come out, you're gonna build up to make that idea there, you know. It's, I don't know, once again, the city's dog in this fight is our railroad and what's gonna do to our public. And again, what's gonna happen on the Duck Creek side, in that video, it shows an access road coming in from to be the southeast side, and it shows an emergency road going off on the north face of a hill. I'll tell you something, when we get snow, your emergency road out of there is not gonna exist. It's gonna be a huge snowbank. So once again, this is somebody's dream on paper that have not done a realization. And I would actually like to, who toured you up Peacock? Who drove you up Peacock? Because I'm telling you, that is a miserable, rotten road. It's been moved over. So somebody, pretty good sized Wables going up there this time of year. Coming down is a scary son of a gun. So this big dream of using anything on the Steptoe side, it's got to be, it's really got to be looked at, you know. And, you know, the amount of money that the county thinks you're going to get out of this, if it happens, 25 years before we get any tax abatement, you know, any tax breaks. Folks, when we look around here, is there anybody here about 10 years old in here? We're all going to be gone. And my granddaughter, the youngest one I got, a year old, she's gonna say, what happened to where we went camping? It's gone. Duck Creek will never be the same.